Okay, good evening everybody. Can you hear me okay at the back? Can you hear me? No. Is that better? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Good, okay. Right, good evening everybody. As Jeanette very kindly said, I'm Sue Ricketts and I'm Senior Advisor for School Improvement. You may have seen my name on the bottom of bossy letters about the early years foundation stage because that is my particular passion. But I also couldn't miss the chance to lead for the local authority on the new primary national curriculum because it's something I feel incredibly passionate about. So here we all are together to learn about the new primary curriculum. And some of the speakers earlier this evening have been a bit pessimistic about it, and I really don't know why, because I think there's a lot we can be optimistic about. And I want you to go away tonight feeling as optimistic as the hundreds of your head teachers and leaders have who've attended local authority briefings over the last couple of weeks. Okay, so I think have you got some primary curriculum papers? You haven't, right, so that's the first problem then. My lovely assistant.
Yeah, it's all right, yeah, I don't mind.
Oh my goodness me.
No, my pleasure.
Oh dear, this is going to be deducted off my salary now. Monitor bill. Okay. In preparing for this new national curriculum, I've not been on my own. I've had a fantastic group of 7 primary head teachers from different phases who've been meeting with me regularly over the past 12 months to consider the drafts, because the primary curriculum we've finally ended up with is actually the 3rd version. And Matt, who's sitting in the audience, is one of that head teacher group. So as I said to the head teacher group have been telling us what you need. So I really hope we've got it right, or we'll all blame Matt. Okay. What we've been giving to schools is a toolkit of materials to help with their implementation of this new national curriculum, and you've got a few of those tools in front of you tonight. The actual national curriculum itself looks like this. It's not a terribly exciting looking document, a black and white text copy. Schools will not receive copies of this, hard copies of this, as is the case with all new DFE documents. It's the download and print off yourself jobby. Within your papers that Ian's really kindly giving out, there is a governor briefing paper, and the link to find this new national curriculum is sitting there near the top. The easiest way to find it, to be honest, is just to Google it. But this is now the final definitive version of the primary national curriculum. And some of the horror stories that the press got hold of tended to relate to the earlier versions. There have been quite a lot of amendments as the drafts have been considered over the last 6 months or so. Okay, so what am I going to do with you in the next 20 minutes or so? Tell you a little bit about this curriculum vision that we're building for Derbyshire schools. One of the things the head teacher consultative group said, they said, so in times of change, we need somebody to help us hang firm to that which we really believe in. And so they came up with the idea of us establishing together a Derbyshire vision for curriculum, which we're busy doing. Been consulting with all the head teachers that have been coming to briefings over the last couple of weeks. We've got 8 schools of children who are going to tell us about their vision for curriculum in Derbyshire, and I'm hoping maybe after tonight some governing bodies may get in touch with me, so more of that later. I'm going to just spend a little bit of time giving you just some headline information about the new curriculum and the implications it might have for your schools, and a little tool to help with change management and the change management process. So that's what we're going to do together. The first thing that we've been pointing out to your senior leaders is that this national curriculum, weighty though it is actually only one part of your children's education. Okay, and actually Mr. Gove has actually said that himself very clearly on page 6 of the new national curriculum, that it's just one element. Admittedly, it's a large element, that it's one element in a child's education around which schools can make decisions about how their children learn best. So this new national curriculum that we have, we're looking on it as an onion. Those of you who are Shrek fans will recognise the analogy. Onions have layers and so do curriculum. Whatever we're doing in our schools has got to be about developing outstanding teaching and learning. That's at the heart of everything we do for our children. And we really believe in the advisory service and in our schools that if we get this new curriculum right, it'll be a contributory factor to both raising standards and improving quality of teaching. Because if our teachers have permission to deliver an exciting curriculum to children, that's going to contribute to outstanding teaching and learning. So we're very much seeing the new national curriculum as wrapped around high quality teaching and learning. Because one thing I know as an ex-head teacher, you can have the most amazing curriculum in the world, but if it's badly taught, children aren't going to make good progress. So we need to keep good teaching and learning at the heart of what we do, wrap the knowledge of the national curriculum around that, but also be mindful of that wider curriculum offer that suits our communities. And it was interesting this morning, as I ate my Rice Krispies, looking at Twitter feed, as we modern women do, and I noticed an article in The Guardian that's just been published by the Curriculum Review Body, a highly regarded Cambridge review body, and they were talking about the 8 ways to raise standards in primary schools. And one of the 8 was about having a broad and balanced curriculum, and another one was about making your curriculum suit your community. So, you know, it's not just us that's saying that, this is being recognised at a high national level. So, I'm just going to give you 2 minutes thinking time because you've listened a lot tonight. We've asked the heads, we've given them a bit more time to do this, and we've asked them to ask their children. But, you know, as we're looking to embrace this change, I think we need to be clear about that which we are not willing to let go of, because we know it serves our children well. And what I'd like you to consider very briefly now, but in more depth back at the ranch, is what it is within your current curriculum offer that contributes to strong learning and progress. And therefore, as you're embracing these changes, you're not willing to let go of. Okay? So just a couple of minutes discussion, and then we'll come back to a little bit more information. Okay. Shall we come back together and I'll tell you what your head teachers are telling me they're not willing to let go of in their schools, and hopefully there's some of the things you've been talking about too. They're talking about how they feel their children benefit from thematic linked learning through first-hand experience, learning in their local community. They're talking about children having core skills in literacy and numeracy that they're then applying in enterprise projects. Are these the sorts of things you've been talking about on your tables? Yeah? And there's been just a few folk who've been to briefings who've said, oh, we've read in the papers, Sue, we've heard on the news, you can't do World War II anymore, it's not in the curriculum. And I'm saying to them, absolutely, that is not the case. Yes, there is a core curriculum that we all must follow statutorily, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But if you have things you do that your children love and learn from and make excellent progress as a result of, you are not going to let go of that. You're going to build it into your new curriculum plans. So, moving on a bit. I think as one of the previous speakers said, I think it was Russ, we've unapologetically got a very knowledge-based national curriculum. And I didn't really understand why until somebody told me about the work of Ed Hirsch in America. Some of you may have heard of Ed Hirsch. He's really influenced the Massachusetts education system and had a significant impact on reducing inequality. And his theory is based on the fact that poor children, and this is a huge generalisation, but the poor children on the whole do not have the core knowledge they need to be successful in education and work, and that puts them at a disadvantage. And it's actually, for me, put all of this in a slightly different perspective. I think if we see this new curriculum as a gift to children, that we make sure we deliver in a way that's exciting, but we do give children the very best that's been thought and said, and you know, we do that in an interesting and exciting way, we may actually be able to do something quite exciting together. The curriculum is about promoting spiritual, moral, cultural, mental and physical development. We're back to the sports rant there. There's also been a lot in the media about preparing children for secondary education. That really got on my wick, actually. In early years, we're told it's about being school ready. Now primary education is about being secondary ready. I was just a bit worried that we might end up being coffin ready. But no, I think if we look at this again as what is secondary readiness, yes, it's about level 4 and level 5, but it's about children having such a joyous and exciting experience in primary school that they love learning and they take that love of learning with them to their secondary school. And I think if we look on this new curriculum as that, then I can live with it, you know, the notion of children being secondary ready. What does the new curriculum look like? You've got this on your governor briefing handout, because otherwise it turns into a bit of an eye test. Unsurprisingly, the 3 core subjects are there, and if you actually look at the new curriculum, about 5/6 of it is detail for English, maths and science, with very embryonic foundation subject programmes of study. Foreign languages, modern foreign languages, has now become foreign languages, because you can now choose to teach Greek or Latin at primary level. The IT curriculum has been rebadged as a new subject, computing, more of that later. Religious education is still a statutory requirement, but sex education has moved statutorily into Key Stage 3, although again, as your wider curriculum offer, there's nothing stopping primary schools offering that earlier. So what's the same and what's going to be different? I'm just going to give you some headlines, and in the pack, if you turn to the back, you'll see a document that's got a little more detail around that. Primary National Curriculum 2014, what's the same and what is different? Everybody find that? Yeah? So you've just got some sort of key messages and excerpts in here. There is very much in English less of a focus on children writing for different genre and more of a focus on quality writing, particularly in Key Stage 1. As an ex-infant head, I thoroughly welcome that. We don't need to teach bullet points in Year 2. We teach children to write good quality sentences with interesting vocabulary and correct punctuation. In English, there are year-by-year objectives for Year 1 and separately for Year 2, and then there's a lower Key Stage and upper Key Stage 2 set of objectives to be taught as a block. You'll have heard lots in the press, no doubt, about poetry. It's been completely over-egged. Yes, children are encouraged to learn poetry by heart, but it didn't do me any harm. And actually, I can still remember This Is the Night train crossing the border. I'm sure lots of other people can too. And I really welcome the focus on reading for pleasure. Just have a think, ladies and gentlemen. Can you remember a book that you were read as a primary age child? Yeah, how many of you can? Yeah, shout them out.
Emil and the Detective.
Emil and the Detective. Anybody else?
5 Go to Smuggler's Top.
5 Go to Smuggler's Top. I remember the weird Stone of Brisingamen, and we acted it out in Birmingham, out on the school field. It was dead exciting. And actually those quality books that I was read as a child made me a lifelong reader. And my daughter, who's now at university and is nearly 20, said to me when she was 8 years old, "Mum, I love books, but I hate literacy." And I said, "Well, why is that?" And she said, "Because we never finish a book." You know, and this notion of chopped up bits of text. You know, I welcome the notion that we read and that children enjoy whole books for pleasure. There's also clearer expectations of handwriting, which again, I think that's a good idea. In terms of maths, there is an unapologetic, huge ratcheting up of expectation. And I've been saying to your head teachers, if you get to grips with nothing else, You need to start looking at these raised expectations for maths. Really, I think level 5 is going to become the new level 4. And you know, the high-performing countries that our new maths curriculum is based upon, like Singapore, the level of work that their children are accessing at age 11 is significantly higher. So, you know, schools do need to start looking at the calculation policies and making sure that staff feel confident to teach that more difficult content earlier. Computing, as I say, a new subject for schools. I was at Heach Primary this afternoon and we were talking about it in the staff meeting. I think this curriculum has many strengths. One of its weaknesses is it assumes that we will be using IT across the curriculum. We're going to be using spreadsheets, word processing, the internet. It doesn't mention it, it just assumes it. So what I can say to you is that any 21st century school needs to be delivering high quality use of IT. But the subject of computing is now very much about control technology. You know, it is new for many staff, and we are as a local authority putting on a significant block of training that your schools can access, because we know that schools are going to need that. Design and technology, Mr. Dyson has written quite a lot of it. The thing that's new for some schools, but not all, is the inclusion of cookery for all children. So I'm afraid if your cookery resources are 2 cracked wooden spoons and an old cooker that hasn't been pack tested for 20 years, one of the things you need to do is start having a look at this offer. But what I'd say to you as somebody that cooked with children all through my career, you know, get to grips with it because it's a joy. The recipes are meant to be mainly savoury. So again, if the repertoire is only of Rice Krispie cakes, you know, that's something else that school needs to start having a think about, because all children are going to be offered cookery. Geography, there are a few changes in terms of the localities studied, but again, you know, if your school has a project that the children adore and they learn hugely from, you're not going to abandon that just because it isn't part of the statutory requirements. You're going to do that as part of your wider curriculum offer. History, this is one where there is a change, and the one where there was most negative publicity. Did many of you read? You know, the 100 educationalists who wrote to Michael Gove complaining about the history draft. And you see that in the press before the summer. What we've got is something that's been tweaked. Key Stage 1 history, I think, is infinitely doable. It's about change within living memory, events beyond living memory, the lives of significant individuals. So I said I could dust off my Florence Nightingale costume, get it out of the wardrobe again. And some local history. Key Stage 2 is a bit more of a challenge because we have to teach the longest to go history, I'm sure that's not very good English, but it's quite late, to the youngest children. So the notion is we start off with Britain, with the early Britons in lower Key Stage 2 and progress through to Edward the Confessor by year 6 in a chronological progression. That is going to present real problems to schools with mixed age classes. So what we're saying to heads and teachers is use some common sense, invest in timelines, teach children about chronology. If you've got great projects about the Victorians and World War I, then carry on doing them as part of your wider historical offer, but you have got this statutory content to cover. If it's something you've not got resources for, it's part of your gaps that you plan to address over the coming year. Languages, one language, children are meant to make significant progress in one language. Again, for some of your schools that isn't going to be a challenge because you're already doing that. For some it is. So it's something to start looking at. Music, PE and art, there's very little change. And I'd be saying to you, you know, if you've got good programmes of study for PE, music and art, you know, you're not going to need to change those to meet these new requirements. Okay, what I think I'll do is just give you a minute to have a little chat on your tables, and then if you've got any sort of questions about subjects, and then I'll talk to you a little bit more about assessment and disapplication. Has anybody got anything they need to ask at this point? A governor colleague has asked about RE. RE content isn't contained within this new national curriculum. It'll still be agreed by the local RE SACRE councils. So the RE content will stay as it is currently, as far as we're aware.
Yeah, Frank Hawkins, Chair as a Falls-Over Infants. You mentioned, sorry, Frank Hawkins, Chair of the Falls-Over Infants. You mentioned a few minutes ago that there's no reason to drop things that you believe, apart from time.
Well, the one thing that...
How do you break the week on it and still do all these things?
I've been asked whether there is a percentage time allocation for any of this, and the answer to that is no. So this is where the decisions about the needs of your children and your community need to guide your planning. So obviously core subjects will have priority, and they need to have priority. But how you divide up the rest of the curriculum and deliver the statutory duties, particularly with Key Stage 1, that is very much an internal school decision. Is that okay?
John King's Vice Chair at St Giles. I think I know the answer to this question. Is there any additional funding?
We as a local authority have received no funding. The public purse, we may all have guessed from Ian's input, the public purse is empty. There is no funding for this. We're providing the support we're providing for schools because we know it's important, but there isn't any funding coming to you direct from government. Neither are there any schemes of work or materials which will supplement this document. What I have circulated to your head teachers, and will continue to do so, are some useful websites that I know DFE are using. So like STEM, the Science, Technology and Engineering and Maths body, are producing support materials for the new national curriculum, and so is the National Centre for Excellence in Teaching of Mathematics. So, we'll continue to send out briefing letters to schools to let you know where you can access free support, but there isn't any funding for the rollout of this curriculum, no. As there wasn't for the introduction of the new EYFS just over a year ago. Okay. Shall I? Sorry, Mr Monkhouse.
Taking into account the extra emphasis on cookery, are you aware that the Property Services Department look upon cooking in classrooms as something to be seriously avoided as a health and safety and insurance risk?
Well, in that case, that's a conversation I need to have with you fairly quickly. Okay. I'm going to carry on. There's been a bit of confusion about when you've got to get started with this new curriculum, which is clarified for us in the Ofsted subsidiary guidance. Basically, the government have what they call disapplied the programmes of study for Curriculum 2000 for this year, to give schools the opportunity, if they wish, to have a run-in and a practice with this new curriculum. What I'd say to you is that what they've disapplied is the programme of study, not the subject. So you can't just decide not to teach history for 12 months, not that you would. Also that it's a permissive measure. So there's no requirement that you start teaching this new curriculum before September 2014. In fact, the children you currently have in Year 1, Year 2, Year 5 and Year 6 will all be assessed under the current curriculum arrangements. So they very much need to continue studying the core subjects in preparation for those assessments in 2014 and 2015. Okay? So really it's Year 3 and 4 who will be the first children who will move through this new curriculum and will take the new assessments, whatever they look like. And that brings me to the proposals around assessment. Just skip that one. New assessment processes will not begin until summer 2016. The government are currently consulting on what that new assessment will look like. And I know there's been some disquiet about, we've got the content, but we don't know how it's going to be measured yet. So that's what the consultation is all about. It closes on the 11th of October. These are the proposals, but at the moment they are only proposals. We've been encouraging your head teachers to express their views about these proposals. The proposals are that current national curriculum levels will disappear and not be replaced. That schools will determine their own formative assessment and tracking processes, leading to a final test or assessment in Year 6. So they've decided there'll be an endpoint test, but the journey towards that endpoint test hasn't yet been agreed. That's all part of the consultation process. There is a definite intention to make SATs at the end of Key Stage 2 more difficult, in inverted commas, in regard to the secondary readiness agenda. And the proposal is that whereas at the moment we have a floor standard of 65%, the new floor standard will be 85%, which is obviously significantly more challenging. They're also consulting on baseline. They don't seem to actually have noticed that all our Derbyshire primary and infant schools do very thorough and rigorous on entry assessment in early years. They don't seem to recognise that happens and are proposing a new baseline assessment, what they call a simple check at age 4, or that Key Stage 1 becomes the baseline. So there's some very interesting thinking. I'm using my language carefully here. Some very interesting thinking in this consultation, which might spur you on to read it, and certainly for schools to respond. They're also proposing that if levels disappear, children at the end of Year 6 will be given a scaled score, and it'll relate to deciles. So children will know, parents will know, where their child sits in relation to the national picture. And the example given of a report for a child who's sitting in the top 10% is matched in the consultation with a report for a child who's in the bottom 10%. So again, that's a proposal at the moment. Things are going to stay the same, are there for you to read, no surprises really. There's a very firm commitment that the phonics check will continue in Year 1, and that there will be end-of-year assessment tests for Year 6 children, which will relate to the new curriculum. Okay, so that's assessment, but at the moment that's all proposals, and I said to your head teachers, some unscrupulous companies are already advertising their wares with regard to this. I'd say hang fire. At the moment it's proposal, and you need to wait until we know exactly what's coming for our children in 2016. As a local authority, we're doing our best to support you despite the fact there's no funding. So we are providing teaching, learning, assessment cluster events, as you can see here. Those are all advertised in School of the Course and Conference brochure, and your schools have all got also a full menu of courses that we're offering to support English, maths, science and computing. We've also got together with the Environmental Studies Service and are running a one-day conference called In Your Own Backyard, which is about using Derbyshire's wonderful local resources to enrich humanities and science. And if any of your schools are interested in hooking onto that, all of these different bodies are going to be presenting and giving workshops, and it's on the 24th of March. We've got the Poet Laureate, the former Poet Laureate, Matt Black, coming as a speaker. And I'll leave that up, that's the contact details, Becky at Environmental Studies, who's actually organising the conference. Okay, so I'll start with a quick romp through, but hopefully the briefing paper you've got in your pack answers any frequently asked questions that I could think of. I'm sure some of you may have less frequently asked questions you might like to ask me now. Okay, final word then. See this as an opportunity, not a threat. Okay, it's an opportunity to review what you do and make it even better.